Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Policies are a key driver of the disorder we see on city streets all over America. Catch and release system allows criminals to keep going back out onto the street and reoffending. What this executive order does, it charges your Attorney General with identifying jurisdictions all over the country that have cashless bail policies, and then it withholds or revokes federal funds and grants that are flowing to those jurisdictions to ensure that we're only supporting the people who have reasonable common sense policies around crime.
So what area does it cover?
Potentially anywhere that has a cashless bail policy. So some of the largest cities, some of the most left-wing states in America
Almost
have adopted.
all of them, right?
Illinois would be a great example of that, sir.
Oh, they have a great cashless bail. You don't even have to go to court sometimes. No, Illinois, I love that state. It's a great state, but it's run so badly by Pritzker. They threw him out of the family business and he becomes governor. Now he wants to run for president. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, we'll sign right here, right?
Sir.
So important. And this isn't Republican, Democrat. This is, and by the way, most Democrats agree with us. But this is just, we got to bring our country back. Okay? That's a big one.
Also on the issue of cashless bail, sir, this is a D.C.-specific executive order. In addition to the measures that were...
Welcome back to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, no cash bail policies equal crime disaster nationwide, and that is why President Trump's recent executive order calling for the end of no cash bail is a great development. But as with all of his executive orders, folks, legislation has to follow at the state and federal levels in order to make the changes permanent that need to be made. The issue received renewed attention recently by the horrific murder of Iryna Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee, by Decarlos Brown Jr. Brown was free at the time of the attack, released on a written promise to appear in court despite his long history of violence and mental illness. So my guest today to discuss this critically important issue is Texas bail attorney Ken Good. Ken received his law degree from Texas Tech School of Law, where he was a member of the Texas Tech Law Review. Mr. Good has argued cases before the Supreme Court of Texas and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, along with numerous other courts of appeals, including the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. He's the author of Goods on Bail, a practice guide created for the bail industry professionals, and is a board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. In addition, he's written numerous articles on the subject of bail reform, including What Successful Bail Reform Looks Like. That's the title. Ken, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. I know you're traveling, so hopefully we got you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on and spending this hour with us. I've been wanting to get an expert on this area on the show for quite a while. Can you just educate the audience a little bit on what is a real bail system supposed to look like? Because I think the average citizen doesn't really know anymore based on all of the crazy policies we have in place.
Well, you know what bail is intended to do, or what its job is, to get people to come to court. And so, you know, the principle of bail is, what assurance are you going to give to the court that you're going to return to answer the criminal charges that that you've been charged with. This over-politicalization of our criminal justice system has caused us to try, as an experiment, some simple release mechanisms. The name changes wherever you live in different states. And I think Trump's calling them cashless bail. It's just a promise. You're agreeing to promise to come to court. And, the reformers say, well, everybody wants to come to court and resolve their cases. But we've learned very quickly that's not true. All these experiments have high failure to appear rates. A high failure to appear rate comes with backlogs because you can't go forward with the criminal case if the defendant's not there. Backlogs put pressure on courts to dismiss cases, and when you dismiss cases so that the system doesn't collapse, the criminals see that as a green light to commit more crime. And that's really what we have going on across our country in our urban areas. We're trying these experiments on cashless bail that do not work and carry with them high failure to appear rates, and that's what's causing all these problems, or a lot of these problems in our urban cities, because they're dismissing cases and criminals see that as just a right to do more damage to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. We used to have some common sense in this country, but I'm seeing what I think I see anecdotally is that these urban areas that have these policies are just disregarding whether somebody is a violent criminal or not, even a repeat violent criminal from what we've seen happen in this country. The president's EO that he signed outside of the D.C. executive order, you've had a chance to take a look at that, I'm sure. What are your thoughts on whether they hit the right items to be effective?
Well, I think one of the issues with Trump is either hate him or you love him. And so anything Trump does carries with it the hate and the love. I think Trump's doing the right thing. I think a lot of times, with the criticism against Trump, he's trying to do what he thinks is right. And I think this does hit the right note. It is putting a spotlight. If we're going to talk about old time politics, as the president, he's putting his bully pulpit, his spotlight on an issue. And the issue is these cashless bail policies and simple release policies that we're seeing in our urban areas. So I think from that standpoint, I think he's hit the right note. And I think the carrot and the stick approach is correct. I just think that the problem I see is whenever Trump highlights something, it comes with a lot of hatred. So in the blue states who already hate Trump, then suddenly they're going to hate cashless bail, even though they're probably already using it. So they're not ever, as long as Trump's in office, they're not going to admit it's not working, even though it's clearly not. And I think the DC model, when he, used law enforcement and flooded DC, shows you we know what to do. We know how to correct the crime problem. It's just now we've got this problem with the far left will not acknowledge that they can't, because if they admit that what they've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years has not been working and that we can fix it, they're just refusing for the sake of politics, then that would hurt them substantially at the ballot box. So they'll not admit that. And so it just becomes even more politically charged of an issue.
Yeah, and it wasn't lost on me. He had to sign a separate executive order for the District of Columbia because the federal government, I don't know if many people know this or not, they have ultimate authority over the district's laws, even though they have a mayor and a city council. That's all but because it's been authorized by Congress to do that. And the president has vast powers there where he could sign an EO and make the locals do what he wants them to do. But outside of that area, I mean, he's limited to what he can affect with his executive order. What is the demarcation line of limitations when you're talking about a city like Chicago?
Well, the executive order focuses on the carrot stick approach. We want you to enact these policies, and if you don't, then you're not going to get your federal dollars. And so he's charged the attorney general with highlighting or identifying the federal dollars that can be taken away if they refuse to limit the use of cashless bail in their jurisdiction. I mean, that's not anything new. That's an approach been used by the federal government for a long time. So I think that is the right approach when you're talking about a subject which is just state policy, because bail is run by and large by the states, because the states are they're the number one the states are the number one enforcer of criminal laws. I mean, the federal government does it too, but it's on a much smaller basis. So, I mean, he doesn't have the authority to tell a state to do X, but he can say there can be penalties. We can take away the benefits that we give you if you don't. We do that all the time, or the federal government does it all the time in other areas.
Yeah, it hadn't been that long since he signed that EO, Ken. But was he right that there is, you kind of alluded to this, is there bipartisan agreement really that this system is not working? It's just they're not going to say it out loud?
Well, where we are in this whole criminal justice bail reform movement is the far left will attack anyone in the Democrat Party that doesn't spout the party line. I mean, you would get an opponent in the next primary. So when Trump says, they quietly support it, I think that's probably absolutely true, because the vocal left will not allow a Democrat to publicly say. I mean, that's why you're not seeing the inner city say, well, this hasn't worked, so we need to try something else. Because they're being held in line by the threat of the far left. And I don't see that changing until we have one more national election where the Democrats kind of get beat on the issue of criminal justice, crime, public safety. And so we need one more election cycle where they get punished for their soft on crime policies. And I think that'll change.
Is that realistic that we could expect that in a place like Chicago or New York City? I mean, Mondami just won there basically saying he was going to defund the police a year ago.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, I agree with you. I mean, is it going to be hard? Yes, I think it can be done. I think the Mondami is a good example of, this election, midterms, the people who are most engaged come out, and so that's usually the party not in power. And so I think you could explain the Mondami thing. I mean, what I think the Mondami signifies is the civil war between the far left and the non-far left of the Democrat Party. I mean, I think he's a perfect example of the fight. I mean, look at Schumer. He didn't endorse him. And look at Jeffries. Jeffries waited till the last minute to endorse him. So I think Mamdani signifies a bigger issue in the Democrat Party. And also, I'm a little bit, I think time will tell. But Mamdani, there were some reports right before the election that Soros had and his groups had given him a lot of money right before the election. I think we're seeing the Soros groups change from supporting DAs and target some mayors and thinking that they can influence criminal justice policy that way. Now with Mamdani being elected, also the mayor of Seattle, they had the same talking points. And so those talking points are very similar to what Harris used in the presidential election. So there's too much similarity. And I've already been saying for a while that the National Party has outsourced criminal justice bail reform policy to these activist groups. And the reason why I say that is because activist groups will never admit they're wrong. They just need more time. Politicians should listen to the activist groups, but then try it. And if it doesn't work, then try something else. But when you outsource it to these activists, I mean, especially the ones that we have on the far left, they'll never admit they're wrong. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. And time will tell us on the Mamdani thing and on the Seattle mayor, because if that's what it is, if they're just repeating what they did with the DAs, those have a very short shelf life. None of the soft on crime DAs has survived 2 elections. And when they get defeated, they get defeated with a law and order DA. So if that's what blows up on their face again, and this time, if they're doing it, it blows up on their face again, this time with the mayors, it'll be a similar result.
Yeah, hopefully that will blow up in their faces again. But I tell you what, I don't feel sorry for the people of New York because they just voted for this guy. To be honest with you, I'm more afraid of what the refugees are where they're going to go. And more concerned
I mean, I've had a lot of friends tell me that. I don't feel sorry for New York. They voted for this, but that's not in their best interest.
No, it's not.
And I mean, and I mean, he's just making promises to give them stuff for free that he doesn't even have the power to give them. I mean, he's giving them free bus rides. That's not his decision. He's going to tax the rich. That's not his decision. And the New York legislature will not do that tax increase because they're all up for election next year. So he's going to potentially crash and burn pretty quickly. But we'll wait and see. I mean, Illinois is a good example. When you go to Chicago, I mean, I could make a really good argument that the politicians in Chicago have turned over that city to gangs. And so, I mean, what would they do differently if they were not, under the control of the gangs than what they're currently doing? So if it's under the control of the gangs, I mean, I don't know if anybody can change anything on the short term, because you're going to have a will to do stuff that would not be perceived well by a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, we got to take a break, Ken. When we come back, we'll see a little clip about legislation. The president talking about legislation, because this has got to be followed up with legislation. I want to get your take on what needs to be in the legislation at the federal and the state level in order for this policy shift to be effective. We'll be right back. Ken Wood. Ken Good.
Do you appreciate all the free programming we produce here at Worldview Tube? Well, if you do, we need your partnership now. If you're already supporting us, thank you. If you're not, would you please consider doing so? We have to have a big November and December end of the year giving. Please go here right now to this website, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You can give through credit card. You can give through PayPal. You'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. You'll also find our phone number. Simply use that phone number by leaving a voicemail for Melissa or texting her, and my wife will get back with you and help you make your contribution over the phone. We send out tax receipts with our EIN number, well, the first week of February of each year. We, again, have to have a very big November and December as we get ready for pushing out more Christian Worldview programming for 2026. So thank you for going now to worldviewfoundation.com. That's worldviewfoundation.com.
We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further. We're starting very strongly with D.C., and we're going to clean it up real quick, very quickly, as they say. This dire public safety crisis stems directly from the abject failures of the city's local leadership. The radical left City Council adopted no cash bail. By the way, every place in the country where you have no cash bail is a disaster. That's what started the problem in New York, and they don't change it. They don't want to change it. That's what started it in Chicago. I mean, bad politicians started it, bad leadership started it, but that was the one thing that's central, no cash bail. Somebody murders somebody and they're out on no cash bail before the day is out. We're going to end that in Chicago. We're going to change the statute. I spoke with Pam and Todd and everybody. We're going to change the statute, and I'm going to have to get the Republicans to vote because the Democrats are weak on crime, totally weak on crime. They don't know why. They want to stop because they get mugged too. But we're going to change no cash bail. We're going to change the statute and get rid of some of the other things, and we'll count on the Republicans in Congress and Senate to vote. We have the majority, so we'll vote.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube, folks, and Worldview Tube provides you the Christian Worldview Network, and that's why I chose to keep my show on this network, is because we try to provide that Christian worldview and shows and information that comes from our perspective. And this is Truth Thursday. My guest today is Texas bail attorney and expert, Ken Good. And Ken, the president's talking about the legislation that he has to follow up with there. What does that look like from a federal level versus what it needs to look like from a state level? Because they're two different things, right?
Well, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were going to propose, I think, a bill on this issue, I think today to someone in the government to get, see if it would get some legs. And I think they're going to, their proposal is to kind of codify this. You're going to get rid of these cashless bail policies, or you're going to lose these grants, or this is what you have to do to keep getting these funds. I think that's when you pass it as a statute instead of a executive order, then they'd have to also pass another statute before they could change it. It wouldn't just be a new executive order. On the state level, Texas is a really good example of how they've addressed it. So they just made a list of violent offenses and said these people charged with these crimes are no longer eligible for cashless bail. And in Texas, that's called they're not eligible for a personal bond. In New York, it would be not eligible for a bail or release on no bond. And in California, it'd be not eligible for a release on zero bail. And so I think that's a good way to start it. But I think it needs to be more than just violent offenses. I mean, you need to have a strong accountability element of this. And so if you just put in a statute that said if they fail to appear for court, they're not eligible for further cashless bail, that would fix probably 80% of the problem, because we've got examples in Houston before the legislature acted where somebody was released 17 times on cashless bonds or bail, and they failed to appear each time, and they just got arrested, brought back to court, and released again. When you don't have that element of accountability, I mean, how can you expect criminals not to see that as okay to commit crime?
Yeah, I mean, it does. It impacts the viewpoint of the criminal, which drives these high recidivism rates, right? But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is how do we fight this phenomenon that's come out of this? And that is guys like Pritzker, the communist mayor in New York, and I'm assuming Mamdani will do it too, come in and go, well, no, we have these crime numbers. Our crime's down. How do we fight that propaganda twist on numbers?
That's going to be a big problem, because if you search Google, I mean, the activists have learned how to flood Google with, I call it pseudo reports, or, cooked, where they cook the books, and it's just, it's pseudoscience. If you search Google for that, you're going to find a whole bunch of studies, or what they call studies, saying crime is down, and you're seeing that from Pritzker. I actually think that's a good sign. If they are at the point where they have to deny that crime is a problem because they can't admit it, because if they admit it, they have to address it. Well, it's not going to last much longer, because it either is a problem or it's not a problem. I mean, for the last couple of years, they've been saying, don't believe your lying eyes, believe us, crime is down. And you don't have to just believe us, look at the FBI statistics. Well, and I've been saying for a while that you shouldn't be believing the FBI statistics for all these reasons. Well, last October, after I had an article published saying that, 10 days later, winky dink of all quinky dinks, the FBI statistics were updated, and suddenly they showed crime was up. Well, in the national election, from that moment on, they no longer talked about crime, because they couldn't. Because suddenly the FBI statistics were contrary to everything they were saying. And so if you remember, in the election, that's when they just started calling Trump a tyrant, Hitler, because they couldn't talk about crime anymore. And so, there's a breaking point where the public just doesn't say anymore, we can't believe you. Crime is a problem. Everything says crime is a problem, but you. And the only reason why you can't admit crime is not a problem is because if you do, then you will be punished for the next several elections because of of the lies you've been saying. I think that's where we are, and it'll be interesting to see, because you can see both. They're playing for broke. I mean, everything they're doing, the Epstein stuff and everything, is to distract the public, to try to just get back control so they can continue the lie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to the video that came out, I think it was yesterday, where 6 veteran and intelligence veterans and military veterans in the Congress made a video about, your right to disobey an unlawful order, but they didn't specify any unlawful orders that have been given. It's the same type of approach, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all distraction, and it's meant to tell law enforcement, I mean, or the military, if you don't follow what Trump is telling you to do, we will lift you up. We will make you a god in the public. I mean, they did that the first term, so that's just a rehash of something they did before.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, as somebody that operates in the bail system every day, when you're talking with other law enforcement colleagues and bail bondsmen, how is the confidence level in this part of the justice system for your average workers that have devoted really and probably large parts of their lives to making this work correctly for society?
Well, I mean, I think the bail industry, I mean, a couple of years ago felt like they were under attack. And you know, I always said the bail industry is the low-hanging fruit. I mean, nobody likes a bondsman. I mean, the stereotype is you're just a lying bondsman. You work for 20 and 30 years to get a good reputation. It doesn't take just one mistake and suddenly you're that confirmed stereotype. But what people don't realize is that the bail industry is just mom and pop industries. They're just, you know, small businesses across the country, and they're a lot of times they're second generation, or right now we're into third generation in Texas. So I mean I look at my family situation, and I look at this and I go, we really got some great families when you're talking about third generation is entering into the family business. And so I describe it as blue collar people with blue collar values. And I think that they're some of the best that we have. What they do every day is get people who've made mistakes to come to court to get their cases resolved. And I mean, the value they give to victims to get their cases to resolution. And if they're found guilty, they get punished. And if they're found innocent, they get released. I mean, that's the one thing that bondsmen do. They get people to go to court. You can't resolve their case without them going to court. So I'm very hopeful. I just think that the period that we're in, and I think we're coming out of it, which is not sustainable. You can't have this amount of crime and the public to allow it to go forward. That's why you see Gascon in LA County get defeated by 20-something points last November. That's why these soft on crime DAs have a very short shelf life, and soft on crime mayors, I think, will follow the same result. They're targeting Democrat areas, so all they have to do is throw a little bit of money at them and they can defeat the Democrat, and then they are elected in the general election. Until they do that in a purple state or a red state, their success will be very limited.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of the DAs in red states like Louisiana win in strong blue areas, like in the northwest part of the state over there a few years ago. I supported a conservative candidate, and Soros came in and just completely defeated us with that DA. He's still in office, but the one in New Orleans didn't last very long either. So I agree.
Well, we had one in Harris County, and she, after, you know, a couple of years, decided these policies just are terrible. So she said she wasn't going to follow them anymore. So the next thing you know, he's putting up an opponent in her primary, and she still won re-election the first time. But then the second time, he put up even more money, and she got beat in the primary when the whole party turned against her. But that one has been very quiet. The new Soros DA in Harris County has been very quiet. He has not enacted a lot of these policies. And so I would say right now he's probably been pretty moderate. And that's probably all you can ask for in a Democrat stronghold right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would give anything for a moderate DA in a Democrat city. They just don't come from that anymore. You know, down here in the South, you know, the blue dog Democrats are a extinct species for the most part, or they've become Republicans quite often.
But you know, we're kind of repeating the same cycle we did in the 60s, where we were forgiving on crime, we released people, crime started going up, and then we had a backlash, and that was Reagan and the war on drugs. I would say part of the reason why Trump was elected is we've now had the same backlash. And so we've completed the same cycle, and we need that backlash to continue one more election cycle to force the Democrats to moderate on crime. Historically, they've been a law and order party. They're just not right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to take another break. When we come back, we'll see a clip about Iryna, the young woman from Ukraine that was murdered publicly on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll be right back with my guest, Ken Good, bail bondsman, bail attorney from Texas.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
I don't disagree at all. I recognize that there is an issue and there is a conversation to be held about the mental health situation that we face, and that we have to have a way of incarcerating these folks to get them help, to get them what they need. But the truth of the matter is the process that became very clear in Charlotte was the fact that you had an individual that had been arrested 14 times, had spent 5 years in prison. It was a known fact that he had schizophrenia. And yet when he sat before a magistrate simply had him sign a piece of paper stating that he would show up for a hearing when it happened. And this was less than a month before he went on that train. And when Iryna Zarutska stepped into that train and sat down, obviously from the video, not really even noticing the person sitting behind her, as his head was propped up against the window, and that individual became a killer within moments and stabbed her in the neck. The problem was a serious breakdown in the process, and I'm very grateful that the General Assembly in North Carolina has already stepped forward, have already passed Iryna's law, and it now sits on the desk of Governor Josh Stein. And he has dodged the question when asked, are you going to sign this into law? Because as we heard in the hearing today, there are a number of things. That was a question that I'd asked. What are the things that take place with Iryna's law? And what are the men that was there that Mr. Woody, that was actually testifying, was able to lay out the things and the steps that would take place that would deal with this cashless bail issue that is a serious issue across our country.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're going to tell the truth about these policies that have resulted in things like Iryna Zarutska's murder there in public by a crazy man, which is no excuse, but released 14 times, and this time released on no cash bail, and just out of the blue executes this young lady in what's supposed to be a free and safe country to the max extent possible. It's unbelievable. I'm still shocked when I see that. My guest today is Texas bail attorney and author, really, and board member of the Professional Bondsmen group in Texas, Ken Good. And Ken, you know, when we look at this, that's what's really elevated this issue up to the top of mind for most people these days, is this murder of this young lady. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you have this disparity in accountability, and you've written a guidebook for bondsmen about how to operate as a bondsman. And one of the things that it does is it shows how it's an accountable process when you have a cash bail system and a commercial bail system. And this no cash bail is completely lacking accountability. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And it's the cashless bail policies are short-sighted. So they're trading off the savings of $45 a day for someone being in jail and sacrificing public safety and crime. And also that impacts commercial property values. I mean, we're starting to see where in these inner cities where they're soft on crime is going up. And so commercial property values are going down. We're now seeing some of those commercial properties being foreclosed on. So they're trading short. I talked to a professor recently. He teaches a class on the economics of crime. And he would argue that, we should really decriminalize a lot of crime because of the economic savings from putting them in jail. And I'm like, you're completely ignoring the benefit we have by having a safe society. If we don't feel safe, if crime is going through the roof, or we were suddenly making it all legal, then these activities are going to make everybody not feel safe, and that affects everything in our community, in our property values, and people start moving and looking for places where they can be safe. And so we're being awfully short-sighted when we start looking at just an economics of just what we can save these pennies, and we're sacrificing these dollars on the bigger scale of things. And I think that's really what's happening, because these activist groups are using talking points that they have tested with focus groups, but they're not intended to do anything other than just affect just a focus group. It's not real policy.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I wanted to ask you, as somebody that's an expert in this area, is what is the political goal of these no cash bail advocates and elected officials? What goal are they trying to achieve? Because it defies common sense, really, when you're creating a lack of faith in the community, in the justice system, from law enforcement and beyond.
I've come up with a bunch of arguments on that one, but the one that I would highlight to you is, I think this started probably 4 or 5 election cycles ago, where 6 months before a national election, there would be some incident that they would start protests over, saying to certain minority groups, you're being mistreated, so you need to get angry and you need to come out and vote, and you need to come out and vote en masse. And that helped them to win several election cycles, very close. But now they've created kind of a riot, and you can't control a riot. I mean, once it gets out of control, because they would have the rhetoric, then after the election, they'd go back to business as usual. Well, their supporters started seeing that. So they started electing what I would call these true believers. And so now you've got the far left really pushing those policies. The true believers are getting elected, and they can't admit these things are not working. And so I think that they pushed their party so far to the left, probably just with short-term goals, and now it's a runaway train and they can't stop it. What will have to stop it is the public saying enough is enough, and they're starting to do that. And the reason why they're doing that is because it's just not sustainable. We cannot have high crime. The public will not stand for crime, but they won't stand for holding everybody in jail either. So we have to find a middle ground. But when we have a backlash, it's because that we had the backlash in the 60s because the left would not help with finding the solution. We're going to have the same thing happen now because the left will not help find the solution because they won't admit there's a problem.
Yeah, and people pay with their lives, though, and families are destroyed and those kind of things.
Well, and what also people don't realize is the very groups they say they're helping with these policies, those minorities are the ones that get hurt the worst as crime increases, because crime by and large is committed within our racial group. So when we've got minorities committing crimes, they're going to be committing them by and large in their minority community. And so when crime starts increasing, it increases there first. Yeah,
and it creates very large, eventually the backlash creates very large incarceration populations. And since crimes are committed in racial groups, the racial groups that are committing the most crime end up being with the highest population. I remember when I ran for U.S. Senate the first time in Louisiana, the population of the prison system there was made up primarily of 18 to 27-year-old young black men. So they're hurting the same communities that they say they're trying to help.
Well, and this mental health issue is just it's a bigger issue than we can ever talk about, because there's no solution that anyone's talking about. And when you talk about how big the jail population is, what we're failing to realize is the jails in our county and in our prison system are the largest mental health providers in our country, and they have been for probably several decades. As we've closed down facilities and we've just moved them to where they are, we're putting them in jail, and so we're putting those facilities in jail. The problem now is, from criminal justice reform, bail reform, we're using the mental health issue as a king's X on the criminal case. So we're just the jail becomes a revolving door for mental health patients. They get arrested, they get on their medication, they get controllable, they get released, they get off their medication, they get uncontrollable, and then they get arrested again. And there's no solution in sight. Well, I think we're ending that period of King's Xing the criminal case based on an issue of mental health. And we're going back to what the only thing we have left is we'll put them in our prisons and our county jails, and that's the largest criminal justice facility. At least they're getting treatment there, because they're not going to get treatment if they're just released back into society. And then when they commit a really serious crime, they stay in the prison facility. We need to. I mean, we have to come up with a better solution, and I don't know what that is, because the reason why all the mental health facilities closed is because they don't have a constituency arguing for them. So anytime a county needed to cut a budget, they would cut that the budget. And I think we ended up having a whole bunch of class actions filed across the country many, many years ago. And that's what ultimately took those down, because we had examples of people not getting medication. We had some severe examples of people starving because they weren't even providing them with sufficient food. Trump had said, well, let's bring back the mental health facilities. I don't know if the result would be any different. They still don't have a constituency to argue for them. And so we don't have a solution really still. I mean, if you and I could come up with a solution to handle mental health, we would become billionaires overnight, because it's that difficult of a problem.
Yeah. I remember documentaries back in the 70s when I was a very young man from people like Rivera showing the mistreatment in some of these large insane asylums and everything. But I think you're right, though, that we do have to have an approach that reestablishes long-term mental health care facilities, I believe. But at the same time, how do you establish that constituency so you can maintain the funding, and at what level? Do we use an incentive from the federal government to the states, kind of like we do in education sometimes, and those kind of things? We got to figure that puzzle out.
We've got to your best chance for long-term survival and to do well is families. If you've got a mental health problem, re-engaging family. I mean, I have a personal story with a sister who had a 30-year drug addiction to prescription drugs after having a really bad car accident, broke every bone in her face, had a brain injury. Ultimately, she was declared incompetent, and I was her guardian for the last years of her life, and she flourished in an assisted living facility. So I think our best bet is we've got to get people to re-engage with family.
Yeah, that's a great input, because you can't isolate them totally away from their families. That conjures up the images of the old days of insane asylums where they're taken out of society, including the family system, completely. And all that does is make them worse, in my opinion. I mean, we've seen that in my own family with mental health concepts. The closer you embrace folks with these conditions, the better off they are over the long term and are able to heal and be able to operate on their own and those kind of things. So we got to take another break. When we come back for the last segment, Ken, we'll see a little clip from Governor Abbott from Texas talking about the law that was changed. And I've got a hand up over in the audience, so we'll take a question from them before we get to the end of the show. I'll be right back with Texas bail attorney Ken Good.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
This session, we confronted a crisis, a revolving door bail system that repeatedly released dangerous criminals back out onto the streets. Hundreds of Texans have been murdered by violent criminals who had previously been arrested and released on easy bail. That's why I made bail reform an emergency item this session.
An emergency item, bail reform, to get away from catch and release policies and no cash bail, whatever you want to call it. And this is True Thursday here on the Rob Maness Show and the World YouTube Network and our X Spaces simulcast. And we've got our audience. And my guest today is Texas bail attorney Ken Good, who's also on the board of the Professional Bail Bondsmen of Texas. Ken, the governor there is talking about the bill that was passed. Should this bill be a model for other states to follow, or does it need more things besides just a list of these crimes that you talked about earlier?
You know, Texas has been dealing with bail reform for 4 sessions now. So their major bail reform was passed probably 3 sessions ago for SB 6. They tried to amend it 2 years ago, and then they tweaked it and added to it this session in SB 9. But they also enacted Constitutional Amendment Proposition 3, SJR 5, which was, it listed, they're calling it the Abbott 9 offenses, where if you're accused of one of those 9 crimes, the DA has the ability to request that you be detained and not released on bail. And they also gave the DA on those 9 crimes, if the judge sets bail and the DA thinks it's too low, then he can appeal that immediately to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals has to issue an opinion very quickly. So, I mean, they're really putting the onus on the district attorney's office and giving them the right to appeal. And so they're trying to give a lot of oversight to judges who are not either following their directives, their statutes on bail, or are not doing what they should be doing.
Yeah, in the research for this show, I came across a clip that I chose not to use. I went with this one anyway, but it was a clip about a story about a judge that disobeyed the law almost immediately.
Well, they gave the ability for the they've added to the ability of the Judicial Council in Texas to remove a judge who's not following the bail statute. And if someone files a complaint, he has to be suspended within 21 days. So they're really serious about these judges who are not following the law for political reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got some hands over in the audience. We haven't taken any questions today, so let's go ahead and take those before we get to the end of the show. Shell is our host over there. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Elizabeth, sir. Thank you, Shell, Colonel, and Attorney. My question is, I think we should be having to do more psychiatric evaluation, because I'm getting tired of all these people getting off on, well, they have a mental problem because they were abused as a kid. So what? I was too, and I'm not out there shooting anybody. I was abused from the day I was born until the day my mother died. So,
do you have a question, Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm getting to it, Shell. So is there anything going to be done about all these people being able to say they've got these mental illnesses when they don't? They're using that as a way to get out of trouble.
I think that's a very good point. It's a point that I've been arguing for a while, because in the mental health world, counselors are taught always support the mental health patient. Always take whatever they say at face value. And so when we try to overlay the criminal justice system on that and they say they have a mental problem, well, we don't triage that. We don't evaluate whether it's true, because the mental health people are taught to be supportive. And so I've said this very same thing. If we're not careful, career criminals will see what's happening and they'll say, oh, I've got a mental health problem. And suddenly we'll King's X the criminal case. I think that's been a problem for a while, but I think it's coming to an end as this criminal justice reform failure, and this is one of them, has happened more. And under the law, it's a very limited thing that will keep the criminal case from going forward. If you have mental problems, you still, if you understand the consequences of your actions, you still have the ability to answer for them. The problem is counties don't want to pay for the medications. Jail, the prison system doesn't want to pay for the medications. I mean, I understand all that, but it can't be a King's X over the criminal case, and we have a revolving door in and out of the jail, and we're just arresting the same people over and over and over. It's a great question, and it highlights the problems and the difficulty on this area of the law.
Yeah, it is very difficult. We got one more question. Let's go ahead and take that. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Reba, sir.
Hi, Colonel Maness and Shel and Drax and everybody. You say, I have a question, because it is my understanding that our prison systems are quite profitable. Don't tell me we don't have money to help these people. We don't have the money to offer the drugs, the prescriptions, whatever, Suboxone for the heroin addicts who need help getting up. There is money there. It is where it's being spent that creates the issue. Am I wrong on that? Because I think Texas prisons are some of the most profitable prisons across the nation. We make a lot of stuff in our prisons, very cheap labor, slave labor. So where is that money going? And I think it should be input to an actual rehabilitation program. So there's my question, if you can figure it out.
Well, I think this is a issue that probably would require some additional research looking into. I think that historically what you're saying probably was true, but I don't think that's true anymore. I don't think we can make somebody work in prison anymore, and I think there would be a lot of people that would argue that's part of the problem with the prison system. I don't think we look at prisons as profitable. I mean, I was immediately thinking maybe we've got some private prisons, and maybe that's what we're talking about, but I don't think the legislature in Texas looks at prisons as profitable. I think that they think the opposite. And so,
may I interject?
Yes.
May I interject?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Did we lose her, Shel?
I don't know, her mic muted.
Oh, I'm sorry, my mic muted. I'm sorry. A law-abiding person here, never spent a day in prison, never had handcuffs on, but I have worked in smaller jails and so forth. Yeah. But I do know, I don't know if anybody familiar with Tina Peters. She wrote a letter on how those women in the prison that she is in, they are forced to work 40-hour weeks, sometimes more. They get paid $13 a week. That is slave labor. This is going on in Texas prisons. We have nonviolent criminals who are trustees. They're in prison for life. Sure. They're driving trucks.
I hear you. I'm not sure it's an additional question, but I appreciate the additional information. I thought we were going to the privatized prison area too, Ken, because there is a certain element of the management of those that some people believe drives them to want to have increased prison populations. And that's an issue that probably needs to be looked at. When you are dealing with the folks that you're getting bail for under a cash bail system, Do you interact with the families of, especially the younger accused? Do you interact with the families? How much interaction do you get with the accused? And is there a mental health element inserted in this by the judiciary process when they come to you?
Well, I would say that for the private industry, the majority of the people that they bail out or bond out of jail, they're dealing with families. And that's probably the secret sauce that the private industry has over every other type of release system, because we get the family involved. And can you imagine? So you've been arrested 10 times and you know, the system is saying you're worthless, you're a failure, but you've still got family members standing up for you and say, we believe in you and we're willing to put our name, our money on the line to get you out, to prove that we still think that you can turn this around. And so I think that what we're doing is we're taking that ability to have family involvement and turn their loved ones around, and we're just trying a simple release mechanism, which they're perceiving as a green light to commit more crime because they have to do nothing to get out. So I think we're actually harming them, because if you think so, there was a study from Yolo County where they compared two people released on low-level offenses, one on zero bail, which is cashless bail in California, and one on the private surety system. And the person released simply on the cashless bail had a 200% greater chance of committing a new violent offense in the next 18 months. I mean, if you look at numbers like that and you say, okay, that's accurate, then you would why would we release anybody on cashless bail? Because we've got a 200% greater chance that we're putting them in a worse position in 18 months. And that's really what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly right. And when you talk to the family members of these accused, do you get a sense of where they're at on their family member themselves as far as I mean, not everybody that's accused is guilty, obviously, so you're innocent until proven guilty. Do you get a sense from the accused, I guess, that they appreciate the family members taking care of them sometimes, or what do you get? What kind of feedback do you get from interacting with the accused and the families in different ways?
Gosh, there's so many stories that could be told on that. I have stories where, the bonding company had somebody out on bail and then they were going to be arrested on a new crime. The police were expecting a shootout, so they're going house to house searching for the guy, and the bonding company contacted the family, and through their relationship with them, they met the family and the defendant at the jail and walked him into the sheriff's office without any gunfire. But we also have examples where, the first line of defense is the family. So the family has stood up for them, but then the family says, well, they've gone back to selling drugs. They're going back to using drugs. So what do? They don't call the DA. They don't call the sheriff. They call the bonding company and says, look, we've got to address this. We stuck our neck out for them and they're back to using drugs. So you've got to do something. And then we notify the courts and we get a warrant. So, I mean, we're the first line of defense for getting people to court and to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing when they're out. When you take that away, you don't have any of that. You don't have any of that family involvement. And so why would you expect anything else but failure, more crime, and families grieving their kids or their loved ones in a worse position than they started?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask that question, because not every day you get to talk to somebody that's in the profession that sees the negative impacts of the cashless bail policies from that perspective. The bail process and the bail bondsman professionals can have a positive impact. And I'm so glad I asked that question and was able to get that out there. Hey, man, we're running out of time here. Tell folks how they can find you and what's next on the horizon.
If you want more information about us or our group, you can go to pbtx.com. That's pbtx.com. We have a blog where we highlight important criminal justice stories, but we also have our own podcast, and there's a link on our menu, but you also can go directly to it, thebailpost.com. thebailpost.com. All we talk about are criminal justice issues. We have a whole library of episodes talking about what works, what doesn't work. If you want to know what the New Jersey plan is, we've got an episode about it. And so we want a library for legislators and the public, just educating them on things that otherwise they would not be educated about.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. It's been a great show, very informative. Have a great one. And Monday is More War Monday again, folks. Dr. Alex McFarland will be with me to talk about the war on Western civilization that we find ourselves fighting right now. Just look at New York City. I'll see you then on World YouTube.